And
Perfect.
take it away, okay?
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. Excited to be here today. And this is a topic that I love talking about. I've been doing mobile time and attendance software for many, many years. About Time's been around for about 10 years. I haven't been here the whole time. I got my start at some competitors, but finally landed here, and there's nowhere else I'd rather be. This is a very forward-thinking company and a product that's constantly looking to improve, very customer-driven, won several awards, and about 1,500 clients across the states and all across Canada, as well as some other countries we're branching out into. So it's a good time to be in time and attendance, a good place to be in, because I think finally construction companies and real estate companies are embracing technology out in the field. They've always had technology in the office. They've always had systems like Sage 300 and estimating systems and whatnot, but having technology in the field is still relatively new, and for many companies, something they haven't even approached yet. But putting technology in the field can really help to minimize your risk, which is one of probably the biggest issue facing construction companies is all that risk that's involved, especially where I'm out here in California, where you have the labor board that's going to always side with employees. You have a lot of powerful unions, and just so much compliance, and that's going to move across the country. As we have all seen over the years, all the nutty things seem to start in California and then sort of just move their way across the country. And I think the crazy compliance we have here that'll happen. So, but anyway, outside of that, there's just so much risk involved with the type of work that our customers do. So we've tried to build a tool that will help them minimize that risk, and we constantly work on growing that. One last thing about Time is we do put 28% of our revenue back into research and development, and we are very, very customer driven. Everything in the software that you'll see today or we'll talk about has been pushed by our customer base. So I love that about this company. Okay, we'll move on now. So obviously, if you're a contractor, you're a risk manager. That's it's the difference between winning and losing. It's the difference between profit and loss. It's the difference between everything is that risk. So giving you a package that will minimize that is obviously incredibly valuable. And there was an interesting article that that we came across not too long ago. It was actually published in 2011, but there were some things that were really surprising about it as far as the biggest risk in construction. And this was a survey that asked open-ended questions about what contractors thought the single greatest risk to a project might be, and their answers were pretty eye-opening. There's, of course, the scope creep and changes in the project compared to the original contract and agreement. Not knowing where your budgets are and overrunning. Most of our customers before they came to us, and I think most contractors out there don't really know where they're at on a project until 2 weeks after the fact. And by that time, it's a pillar of smoke in a rearview mirror that you're driving away from awfully quickly, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. So overruns are a huge problem. And then just that process of trying to get paper or even spreadsheets, moving it around. Sometimes, satellite offices are way out there, or maybe there's no office, but guys are 50 miles from the office or the next state over, or all the way across the country. Getting timesheets in, getting them approved, then getting them uploaded into Sage 300 or Sage 100 is a huge problem and really slows down the process. And then it makes it tough to cut payroll and impact job cost accurately, because there's that mad rush and dash to get it done. And you're going to, obviously open yourself up to errors, and then you're cutting payroll in the middle of payroll. If you're union-based, you got the union staring at you, and here in California, the Department of Labor is going to audit you. It's really tough if you're cutting payroll in the middle of payroll and making errors, because usually Department of Labor or the Labor Board, whatever it is in your state, is going to side with the employee. So that's really tough, the approval process. And of course, safety on job sites. There's many ways to document things that we're going to show you today. Safety is obviously in the forefront of everyone's mind. We want to keep workers safe. Whenever I hear horror stories about accidents and unfortunate demise of people and employees, it's heartbreaking. So we want to keep people safe, and we want to document everything to help minimize our risk. Site conditions, weather, whatever it might be, materials, you name it. It's tough with site conditions and the unknown popping up. So that takes a good look at what contractors feel are the biggest problems in their processes and the difference between profitability and no profit. So one thing that I thought was really interesting, though, is that, as you can see down here on the bottom, that the responses demonstrate that the industry perceives its own processes, procedures, and relationships as the greatest risk to a project, rather than things like the economy or labor markets or things that might affect other sectors. The positive implications result that this industry has the ability to control risk itself, and I think that's a very powerful statement right there, and says a lot about where construction is. So so we have the ability to control that, and that's what About Time is really all about. Now these are timesheets from one of our owners. We were founded by two contractors, and Ryan Remkes ran his own construction business, Better Builders, in Utah. Was pretty successful, and he did everything on paper. So I don't know if these look familiar. Maybe yours are a little more sophisticated. Maybe they're spreadsheets. Maybe they're some nice printed out timesheets. Maybe even load your employees onto the timesheets and your cost codes so you're ready to go. But these numbers, these totals, I bet they look the same. It's whether it's written on on a 2x4 and turned in, or a hot dog wrapper, or a nice clean timesheet that you printed out. The inaccuracy exposes you to tons of risk. Gosh, getting away from that, boy, it's the difference between night and the daytime. So some different ways to manage this risk. One of the biggest things is to document as much as possible and get it while it's happening. Doing it after the fact really won't do you much good, but actually documenting events in real time is incredibly powerful. Many of our customers, job site photos, they live, breathe, and die by it, just documenting everything they do. And if you can do it in a simple way that's really quick and doesn't burden your foreman or a project manager or superintendent, then gosh, I mean, why not document everything that you can, and then have it stored back in a database and all tied together, so that if there is an issue, you can go right to that photo or right to that particular historical record of that project and see everything from form data to weather data to photos to field notes to the labor on that particular project, who worked on it, having everything at your fingertips, and incredibly powerful. And we've heard so many success stories over job site photos of customers who maybe they do warranty work, and someone says, hey, my roof is leaking where you fixed it last year. Well, being able to go to a photo, the GPS coordinates of where the time was recorded, seeing a form where the customer signed and agreed that the work was completed, and then be able to go back and compare that historical data to where they're saying the leak is, and then finding that it's maybe 250 feet away from where that leak was. There's so many different stories like that of how job site photos have helped our customers. Finding out real-time progress on the job site, compared to the budgets, and presenting that information to project managers and decision makers who can head off problems at the pass before they become a huge issue. Allowing the field in a very simple way to report on anything. We do have a form feature I'm going to show you also, but there's a quick way that people can just record with their voice. It can convert to text, or they can send it to the office as an audio note that can be listened to and kept for historical purposes, of everything, documenting everything on the job site, or as much as possible. Of course, these guys are working. They're your money makers. They're out there using their hands and getting the job done. But if they can, in a very simple way, document what's happening on the job site, boy, it's going to help everybody in the long run. And then a big one here in California is, and elsewhere also, is having employees agree, maybe that they did not get hurt on the job site, or that they took all their required breaks, or that they were given their lunch period. Having them agree to questions that could be, in English, Spanish, French, Canadian, whatever you want to translate those to. But having employees agree that this or that, whatever you want them to agree to, is incredibly powerful. And then having that at your fingertips, if you are audited or sued or anything of that nature, no, here's a history of everything. So incredibly powerful and all right at your fingertips. You can't beat it. With the employee feedback questions, it could be done upon clock out. You can have a foreman clock his crew in the morning, have them transfer throughout the day to different jobs and different cost codes, but then maybe have the employees clock out, or have them clock in the morning and have them clock out at the end of the day, but just go ahead and answer those feedback questions. Again, very, very powerful, very simple to do, and can still be done in about 5 seconds or less. So to spend 5 seconds to get that kind of information, the reason we put that in there actually wasn't customer driven. It was by our CEO, who ran his own construction business and incurred about $250,000 through a lawsuit where an employee said he got hurt when it was clear that he didn't get hurt on the job site. He'd actually twisted his knee in a softball game over the weekend. So when he built this system, or was a part of building the system, that's an important aspect of it, because he understood when you don't minimize your risk, what happens. Another powerful thing is having real-time information about your budgets. About Time will pull the budgets over from Sage for each cost code, how many man hours it should take to complete each, what the estimator said it should take to complete each phase or each cost code or extra or aspect of that project. And then also units as well, if you're doing units to be completed or whatnot. As that time accrues and units are reported, it's going to go back to the office and impact those budgets immediately, kick out those totals, the accrued totals, to the field, as well as through scheduled reports and alerts. Let the people who need to know, hey, budgets are within this predetermined percentage, or you can manage more by exception than have your project managers or superintendents staring at a screen. So really powerful to get that information as quickly as possible. So it can be the same day that work is performed, that a project manager that night or the next morning can have a report in his inbox that's automatically generated, or an alert that he gets immediately when budgets are being impacted in a negative way. And he also has access at all times to see where the budgets are. So incredibly powerful. Again, as I mentioned, that pillar of smoke in the rearview mirror does absolutely no good for anybody. Getting that real-time data is incredibly powerful. Also, a big problem in construction is weather and the risk that comes along with it. So to have historical weather, have real-time weather, and also alerts tied around weather. Say you're welding and the temperature is too high. You can an alert can automatically be sent to the foreman to let him know that where the temperature is, so we can pull that the welder off. Or maybe the wind speed is kicked up too high, and by OSHA requirements, the crane's got to come down. It's really tough out in the field to know when that has hit, when it's time to go ahead and pull that crane down. So to have alerts, again, really very beneficial. And then also having that historical weather. Maybe concrete cracked or something, and you need to go back and look. Or maybe you were plastering, and the moisture, the customer saying it was too high. Well, you have at your fingertips the weather all throughout the day on every single job site, historically at your fingertips. Years down the road, you'll still have that there. Again, just minimizing that risk. Boy, I just can't overemphasize it. So with those alerts, there's many different alerts built into the system that will help with risk. So things, and also aspects of the job can be automatically recorded, like I said, through the weather and through some other aspects of the system. So you can set those thresholds, and it will send out alerts when weather has gone up or down within that threshold. There's also dashboards in the system, as I mentioned, with the budgets, with the weather. There's also field note dashboards. So these are all real time. As data hits the office, you see all the field notes for the day, all the forms that have come in for daily logs or change orders or tickets or whatever it might be. There's also field notes There's, you know, the job site photos will send out alerts, all sorts of different things. Very, very powerful. And then documenting those events. When a field note comes in, or, you know, different other alerts within the system, we can create groups. You know, when overtime's hit, maybe you want payroll or your project managers or your superintendents, whoever's overseeing the job, to know when overtime has been reached by an employee, or when weather has negatively, you know, impacted the job site, or budgets are within that predetermined percentage, or if an employee or supervisor clocked in a crew or themselves away from the job site. Also around the GPS, there was a very interesting story that a customer shared with us a couple weeks ago, that was shared in our sales meeting, and it made me happy because you know, people usually think that the GPS aspect of the system is a negative. They want it because they want accountability and to know the employee or the supervisors at the job site when they're supposed to be. But we've also seen recently some things like you know, a customer who had a driver in a company vehicle who was on one side of town. He was accused of a hit and run on the other side of town. Well, they saw the time of the accident, went back and checked his records, and he had clocked into a work order about 5 minutes before the accident, completely on the other side of town. Boom, end of story, risk gone. And there was the proof was in the pudding, and the company was off the hook. Otherwise, they never would have been able to prove it. So when the field notes come in also, we see a lot of customers, since these automatically generate an alert and an email, use it for PTO requests, or maybe if they're a union house, maybe a union employee needs to do training at the union hall next week, so they can report to their scheduling staff that, hey, Joe's going to be out, you know, for 4 days next week doing apprenticeship training or whatever it might be. So we've seen field notes used in all sorts of different ways. And again, those can be recorded with the voice, or basically kind of texted into the system, or recorded with the voice and converted to text. And job site photos, of course, sending out you know, alerts on those as well. So this is complete visibility. And when I first got into this industry, all I used to hear was, I want to catch my cheating workers. I want to. These guys are burning me for 45 minutes a day, and they are. You know, that's just the nature of work out in the field. When you don't have a time clock, that's going to happen. It's human nature. But what I've heard in recent years is that visibility. That's the power. Knowing it as it happens or right after it happens is incredibly powerful, and you can't beat it. There's as I mentioned before, reports can be scheduled through About Time. So we have about 30 canned reports. We also support third-party reports within the About Time Control Center, so you don't have to export data out. You can run it through your own reporting engine, maybe you know, Crystal or Access or whatever it might be, Excel. So we can support third-party reports as well as all of our canned reports, where you can select also certain criteria on what you want to report on. The one on the screen is one that is very popular in the system, a location daily log. That just, you know, this is run for 1 day, and it just pulls all the different information together. You can see it's a Boeing East Tower job. I've got all my employees and what the task they worked on, their regular time. It would show if they push into OT, the weather information throughout the day, any field notes that came in that were relevant to this project, asset usage as well, which we haven't even gotten into, but you can track assets through About Time also. So, you know, all these reports can be scheduled to run at the end of each day, midday, the next day, once a week, whatever you wish, to groups of people or individuals or even customers. We have customers who use it to send data to their customers. Maybe the GC wants to see all the labor and where those cost centers were at the end of each day. You can schedule that report to run right to their inbox. So, you know, very powerful. It gives you all that information at your fingertips, as I just mentioned. And most of it is done within 5 seconds or less, which keeps it really simple for people in the field, keeps that adoption rate up, and you know, and if it's done simply, in a very simple manner, how to clock people in and take photos and record field notes and whatnot, and all that information that's being collected in the background just automatically, it's much easier to get the employees in the field to adopt it. If it's complicated, they're going to find a way to sabotage it. So we've done our best to keep things as simple as possible. Now, another aspect of the system to record all sorts of information is Forms Express. And what this does is allow you to take your paper forms that you currently have, or maybe they're in Excel or whatever it might be, and the foreman's filling it out on a laptop, or maybe they're trying to do something through Dropbox on their iPad, and you got this hodgepodge of different ways you're collecting time. You're collecting form data. You've got photos on a digital camera, and they're trying to bring SD cards in. Well, all that can be tied together into one neat, clean place, and that's Forms Express. So what we do, instead of scanning a form and then trying to make the fields active so they can click on an area and have a drop down or something, or type in, that wouldn't work on like an iPhone or an Android phone. Maybe a tablet, definitely a PC, but who's carrying around a PC on the job site, right? So so what we did is take a form and just ask the questions that will populate the form, and then determine what type of answer can be given, whether it's yes or no, true or false, multiple choice, a drop-down list of materials, then ask how many they used, what did you charge the customer. Maybe it can be, a radio buttons they can toggle between. So just give them a simple question, and then an answer that can be given right away. Maybe it's a text box that they can type in, whatever it might be, but just keep it as simple and as quick as possible. And then in the background, once they answer those questions, get their customer signatures, whatever it might be, then it creates the form that can be emailed from the device. It can be printed from the device. It goes back to the office. It's a permanent part of that job history. So everything, again, right there at your fingertips, and just eliminating all those paper forms for good. And also the filing cabinets they go in, and the banker boxes that you store them in. And then when there is an issue, how the heck are you going to find it? Well, if it's right there in a database at your fingertips, even after a job's closed out, boy, that's real power. So it'll take a form that looks like this. This was the customer's form. I covered up their logo there so they don't get hounded or anything. But so I use this in demonstrations quite a bit. But at the top they ask the day of the week. The guy would write it in. Then they ask the date. He'd write it in. He'd write in all this information. He'd write in the equipment and small tools that they used, the materials used, and the quantity, whether it was from stock, what they charged. And I had to call this customer and ask them what this said. And the representative there said that's the problem, is we can't even read these things. We're supposed to get them in, type them up, send them to the customer. We're calling the foreman to try and figure out what the heck he wrote. He can't remember what he wrote. So just a huge issue. So what I did is I built this form template in my demo database. It's that easy that even a salesperson can do it. Built that form template, synced it over to my iPhone, and filled it out, and that's what the report looks like afterwards. So very clean and concise. But not only can you get text information like you see on here, through forms we can also do photos, video, voice notes, GPS verification and location of where the form was filled out and signed, customer signatures, employee signatures. They can have their safety meeting topics, all agree on the form that they indeed are part of that safety meeting and agree to what was taught that day. It could be a work ticket. It could be a service order. It can be a change order. It can be a daily log, material requisition request, acceptance of materials form, just a vehicle inspection list. It can just go on and on and on. So incredibly powerful and very robust, and again, minimizing that risk. So here's one that I actually did this work order myself. I created a work order, synced it over to my iPhone, and then this was over the weekend between playing with my kids, where I went around and pretended, I was one of your agents out there, a tech maybe, doing glass work. And all this text on here, I did it with my voice, and it converts it to text, which is, keeps it really simple for people in the field. And voice to text used to be terrible. It was just awful. I didn't even use it because it would just get every other word wrong or every word wrong. It's come a long ways. Apple and Android have changed things, and voice to text works extremely well. Even with accents, it still works extremely well. So you can see I got job site photos in here. I've got the customer agreeing to the change order from the original contract. I have them agreeing to the amount. I've got them, I've got the GPS coordinates of where I did the work at. Again, very simple to fill out, but very powerful on the back end. So I mentioned that daily log and all the different weekly reports, the daily reports that can be auto-generated and also with the field notes, employee time cards. You can get labor usage reports, payroll detail reports, weather reports, time card per location, the employee time card with their signature on it, huge here in California that we're supposed to have every employee sign for their time, when they're not punching the clock. So very powerful and all right there at your fingertips. Now, I mentioned GPS briefly before. I wanted to talk really quickly before I show a little bit of the software, how that works. Because, usually with GPS systems, there's a recurring charge, there's a fee monthly. With About Time, we just tap into the GPS on handheld devices, on iPhones or iPads or Android phones or tablets. Some Windows tablets also will grab GPS coordinates. And we tap into that GPS, so there's no monthly fees, there's no recurring charges. There's also alerts, as I mentioned before, that will automatically be sent out. There's discrepancy reports. The coordinates are permanently attached to the employee's record, or if it was a supervisor who clocked in a crew, permanently attached to their record. One of our customers in Dallas had told me a story a couple years ago when I was at their site visiting them. The first day they deployed the system, after our trainer had left and they were going live that Monday, 4 of their foremen, everyone knew the GPS was active. 4 of their foremen, one of them was at home when he clocked in his crew, possibly in bed, or maybe he'd just gotten out of the shower, who knows. One of them was at a coffee shop. One of them was on State Highway 121, and I think the other one was on 35. And none of them were near the job site, and all clocked in their crews. Everybody else was on board. They were at the job site. They clocked in their crew. Boom, they were good to go. But these 4 guys just couldn't help themselves. And they're probably good guys. The owner, Brad, he didn't want to fire them, but he could have that conversation now that he couldn't have before. But as I mentioned before, there's also many other reasons to use the GPS to show a customer, no, we were really there on site. Or like the story I mentioned earlier about the employee who was accused of a hit and run when he was nowhere near where the hit and run happened. But what's nice about it, and I haven't mentioned this yet, but a very important aspect of the system is in any system you look at, is make sure it works in disconnect mode. Make sure it doesn't need an internet connection or a browser to operate the system. Our GPS also works in disconnect mode, just like the rest of our app, because it goes right to the satellite instead of the cellular triangulation like a lot of other companies use. And it also connects to maps, so you can go right down to the street level. And as I mentioned, the alerts and the scheduled reports around it as well. Okay, before we look at a little software, I just wanted to explain kind of how the data flows around. And this also is big with risk, because you need data to move as quickly as possible. If it's sitting there, on a piece of paper, that's doing no one no good. But if data is moving and grooving, and you're seeing it, and you're being alerted upon it, and you're getting it into stage quicker, it's the difference again between night and day. So we have a tool that we've built that actually you can schedule, that will go ahead and through a live connection look at Sage 300, Sage 100, or a number of the other Sage products. But it will go ahead and look through a window maybe, if you will, and look at the different tables and find changes, find a new project, or maybe you added a cost code or an extra to a project, or maybe you close that project out, or you change the budgets. We'll look for changes and then refresh them automatically in the About Time system. This could be once a minute, it could be once an hour, once a day, at midnight, once a week, whatever you want. It's a task that runs. Then we'll also pull employees and assets into the system. So you just maintain one database, and that's within Sage, instead of, a lot of the other time and attendance companies out there will have you, manage 2 databases, set the job up over here in Sage 300, then set it up over here in their system. This is just a direct link, so it's a mirror match. The control centers are back-end software. It's usually on our customer server, but a lot of customers host it also with a third-party provider. It doesn't matter to us wherever you want to host it, or again, it could be on your server. We have a SQL backend, MS SQL, so it's a scalable database, but doesn't take up a lot of room, so it's not a resource hog. Now, when that data comes in to the control center, you can place restrictions on it if you want. So maybe this foreman out here, you only want him to see a certain job or certain set of jobs, certain people, or maybe you have employees that have employee-specific cost codes that it should override the job-specific cost codes. There's all sorts of different restrictions that can be placed on data, or of course you can allow everyone to see everything, or kind of a hybrid of the two. But when syncing the data, it's a bidirectional sync, and and that's the only time they require an internet connection. The rest of the time, these devices could be in a basement of a high-rise, they could be in an igloo, they could be on the frozen tundra, they could be in a cornfield in Nebraska. It doesn't matter. Those devices could be anywhere still reporting real-time data, capturing it, and then when they have a connection, they can go ahead and sync. If there is a connection throughout the day, we have an option called AutoSend that will allow data to just flow into the office for the different transactions like clocking in, changing cost codes, clocking out, clocking onto equipment, different things like that. But we do train users of the system to sync at least once a day, because it's a bidirectional sync, as I mentioned. So any new jobs are going to be sent to the device, or if you've made a job inactive, it's going to remove it from the device. If you've added employees, add them to the device automatically. If you made them inactive, it'll take them off the device so no one can accidentally report time. So it just keeps everything in sync and together. As I mentioned, when data hits the office, the number of alerts, if you want to know when employees hit overtime or budgets are within a predetermined percentage or employees clocked in away from the job site, whatever it might be, those happen automatically as soon as the data hits the office. So everyone knows what in the heck is going on those jobs instead of waiting 2 weeks when no one can do anything. So time can be reviewed and approved. We have up to 4 approval stages, and those all can be done. Well, there's a number of different ways. There's you can have an instance of the control center on a remote, maybe at a remote job site where they log in on your network. It could be we also have a web-based approval, review and approval scheme in place where people can just have a browser and log on and approve time. Employees can do the same. So it really helps, as I mentioned earlier in that survey, that the approval process is really tough for most companies. This brings it all together and allows you to approve time from most anywhere. And on these devices out in the field, employees can approve time if you want them to. Sign for it right on a touchscreen device, and foremen can also review and approve time. And depending on the capabilities you give them, they could also edit time if you wish. But then they can allocate time to different cost codes after the fact. So so it really helps to bring all those approval stages together and simplify it and make it a lot quicker. So once data has been reviewed, edited, approved, it's good to go. You can close out a batch. We do have some customers that will go ahead and, if their processes allow for it in their workflow, get the data into Sage daily. Through Sage 100, they have an API where we can directly upload the information. Through Sage 300, they do an export process. We do have customers that export every day or every other day. They put it in a pre-time card. That'll go ahead and impact job costs so they can see financially how they're doing almost as it's happening, or at least the next day or that night. So they'll put in a pre-time card. At the end of the week, use the accrued time function in Sage 300. That'll back out those subtotals and enter the totals. And so, man, talk about visibility. That's some real power. If you can do that. Some companies, their workflow just doesn't allow for it. But anyway, so we'll create a file and go ahead and upload that information. Before we do, we can also process overtime. We can handle, a lot of union rules, daily over 8, weekly over 40, and many other different types of overtime. So that could be done, and you can have it as part of your reporting system all week and know who's reached overtime, what jobs have. So again, just a lot of visibility. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and bring up my iPad here. And I'm connecting through an app called Reflector. I just want to put that disclaimer in there because it connects through Wi-Fi, but allows me to show an Apple device on a Windows PC here. And usually in the real world, that doesn't happen. They're arch enemies, kind of. But anyway, so it connects through Wi-Fi, so sometimes it disconnects. So if it does, I'll just go ahead and reconnect it. But anyway, you can see About Time as an app that's running right here on the device. And my favorite game, Tetris, is right above it. But anyway, got About Time running, so I just have to tap that app. It loads it up right away. You can see we've modeled this after an ATM to keep it extremely simple. I can give individual employees PIN codes, anywhere from 4 digits up to, I think we accommodate 12 digits now for one particular customer. That's a lot of taps on the screen, but that's the way they wanted it, so got to give the people what they want. But you can have all sorts of different workflows. We'll have customers that have drivers. They'll have mechanics. They'll have new construction. They'll have guys doing service work. They'll have office employees. They'll have exempt employees who need to code time to jobs, and they'll all need different workflows and different prompts and things. So we've created many, many different workflows that can be built into the system. Even here on the same device. For instance, I'll put in the first employee's 4-digit PIN code. Maybe this is a guy who's reported to the foreman. Foreman hands him the device. Daniel, clock in. Put in your 4-digit PIN code, hit the in button, and off he goes to work. So it takes about 3 seconds. I slowed that down while we were talking. Maybe a second workflow would be an employee who maybe they drive between job sites. So I want to give Sarah here the ability to fill out a form at the job site that she arrives to, or when she's leaving, or whatever it might be. When she chooses in, you'll see she's prompted to change her job. So maybe we're going to gauge her travel time between jobs and start billing towards the next job. So if she said yes, she can see a list of projects that might be allocated to just her. Maybe it's every job in the the active job. But when she goes to clock in, she just sees maybe the cost codes that are relevant to her. So maybe she'll clock in a travel time. So now when she arrives at the job site, she doesn't have to clock out of travel time. She would just clock into the next task or the next job or whatever it might be. The system knows to enter time on the last job, last code, and move it to the new codes. So it keeps it really simple. No one really has to clock out till the very end of the day, which again keeps it very, very simple for people. And you see everything is menu driven. I've determined what screen she sees and when she sees them and in the order. So just again keeps it very, very simple. I can also, maybe Sarah got to the job site, and when she goes to clock into general requirements or to a work order or whatever it might be, I can prompt her to put in how many miles she drove, or maybe how many linear feet of pipe was installed, or whatever it might be. So can also prompt them on units. Something else to show you one more workflow with an individual employee here. You can see Larry here. He can create a field note, and I give him the ability to change the job before he clocks in. But when Larry clocks in, he sees a list of job-specific cost codes. And maybe he's an equipment operator, so I can tie equipment to cost codes. So maybe he chooses rock excavation. I did a demo this morning, and I had him clocked into common excavation. So maybe I'm going to ask him, how many cubic yards he excavated, and then maybe I'm going to have him show him a list of equipment to clock onto. So maybe I'll have him clock onto this grader. So now you can see in this confirmation screen, I got the date, I got the real time, I've got the employee, I've got the job, I've got the cost code, and I've got the asset, and it took me 5 seconds or less. So, I mean, I know a lot of companies, it's hard to imagine getting to real time. Now, we do have a timesheet out also that could be done after the fact, but man, for 5 seconds to get all that information, that's so powerful. So if he made a mistake, he can hit cancel and then reselect his codes, but if he's good, he hits accept. We grab a fix on his GPS coordinates. We know he's at the job site. We know he's on the grader. We know he's doing rock excavation. We know what job he's on. If he has a connection, like I do up here, you can see, I already see that in the office, in the control center, and I know everything. And if he wasn't at the job site, I've already got an alert that he wasn't there. So now the last thing we'll do here with the employees is clock someone out. So instead of green, I'm going to tap the red because I'm done for the day. You can have employees clock out for lunch or not. We can auto-generate a lunch in the office. But I can also have them certify that they were given their appropriate meal periods and breaks on this workday. Or where you heard on the job site, it can be an unlimited number of questions. It can have a numeric value for the answer or a yes or no. So moving on from the employees, before we wrap this up on the iPad, is the foreman. Here's my foreman. He can choose the top option to clock in or out for a crew. We're going to use default so he remembers his crew. He could have a bunch of employees down here to choose from if they show up on his job site. If it's a long list, we've got a little search box that they can put in the first 1 or 2 digits of the name or the employee's code. But when my foreman goes to clock in, I can prompt him to change the job or not, totally optional. We, of course, want to give them as few taps on the screen as possible just to get them through the system quicker. But maybe if everyone was doing the same thing, maybe we were pouring concrete or something, ready mix, I can have them clock everyone into the same task. Or maybe I can just clock them in and then add their cost codes anytime throughout the day, or wait till the end of the day when everyone's clocked out and just simply allocate that time to different cost codes and then do it for one person, apply it to as many people as I want, or do them individually, whatever your workflow demands. So you can see very, very simple, very straightforward. Foreman can also see job site information. They can set the job on the device and have other employees clock in, or take job site photos that will automatically be date and time stamped and applied to that project. They can look at location information, contact information, any notes you want to supply also. They can look at budget information that's going to update and refresh every single time they sync. It's optional if you want to show the foreman this or not. It could just be project managers. But I can see all the original budgeted amount and what's accrued and our over and under and percentage of completion. The middle tab, I can see the units there that we're completing. And then I can see a summary screen breaking down what we're doing per hour and percentage of completion. So instant feedback. You can schedule a report to go out to them, but they've got it on their device at their fingertips as soon as they sync. Job site photos, really easy to do. Just tap on the menu. It opens up the camera, snap the photo, date and time stamps, it applies it to the project, and then feeds into those reports and into the dashboards and the location manager back in the office. We can also report on assets, usage, meter readings, any notes, apply a cost code to them, employee time, whatever it might be, be done completely after the fact. Approve per diem in the employee manager, see emergency contact information for employees. The records manager, I can have people, I can have my foreman allocate the time after the fact, can do approvals with the signature right on the touchscreen device, spot check to see who's on the clock, based on privileges, can edit time or change cost codes or add cost codes or equipment or production units. Field notes, I've already mentioned those, and then Forms Express, just, again, a very, very simple way to report on just about anything on the job site. And it keeps it really simple and scalable because of how I mentioned before that you can require the type of answers you want to be given. This is that roofing labor report we looked at before. It's going to automatically default to remember who I am and the last task and asset that was selected. So if I was doing a vehicle inspection report, I can set the association and name the asset, and then that's a permanent part of that history back in the office. But for day of week, I gave them a drop-down list of the possible days of the week they could select from. Safety problems, I gave them a yes or no. Safety notes might be have the keyboard pop up when I tap in that area. Maybe materials used, I can give them, ask them, which material was used, pull in a list of materials. I can ask them the quantity that was used, whether it was stock from charge, whether it was, what we charged. Again, all those are customizable, all those headers and the type of answers you want to give. Photos, the customer signature agreeing to the work or whatever it might be. But again, very simple, and you determine what type of answers can be given. So anyway, that's kind of taking a high-level look at the mobile app. There's a lot more to it, but again, that's from the high level. The system also works, in the Windows environment. We've got it working on BlackBerry, almost all Android devices, tablets, and phones, all iOS devices, all versions of the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and the iPad and the iPad Mini, and then also in the Windows environment for tablets and desktops and laptops and netbooks, notebooks, toughbooks. And there's a few more things you can do in the Windows environment that you can't really do yet in some of those other operating systems. They're just not maybe as mature or as interested in accommodating drivers and different things that Windows does to allow for things like barcode scanning, RFID, biometric verification, PIN code verification. So we can do those in the Windows environment. And we've been very successful with biometrics over the years. We have some very large customers that, running thousands of employees where every single person clocks in with their fingerprint or with their finger. There's actually no fingerprint on file. The FBI couldn't come to me and say, Tim is wanted for a bank robbery. We need to see his fingerprint. There's no fingerprint on file. It's actually reading into the finger and finding key characteristics, the vein structure, the second layer of skin, the peaks and valleys. So you can have a hard-to-read fingerprint, maybe with little cuts on it and whatnot, and still be able to get on the clock. Department of Homeland Security uses it, FBI uses it, and thousands and thousands and thousands of employees are clocking in every day with about time right out in the field in heavy highway, roofing, drywall, electrical, HVAC, all verticals of construction, right out in the field. Sometimes in a job trailer, they're clocking in. Sometimes we see a Windows tablet set right on the back of a pickup, and employees clocking in. It's pretty powerful, pretty neat stuff. But just to show you real quick how easy it is to clock in and why it's so fast, the worker walks up, touches their finger, which I have one here on my desk. I touch my finger, brings me up. I just clock in. Next guy steps up behind me. He goes to clock in, and we just do that one after another. Boom, boom, boom. Now you can have them pick a cost code and slow things down a little bit, or you can have the foreman add it after the fact, or at the end of the day, allocate all the time, but it's just a quick, simple way to get people on the clock and verify that it's definitely that employee, they're definitely there, and there's no dispute. So just taking all this and connecting all those operations in real time, I love this quote, and it never gets old for me. It's one of our owners had said it, a couple years ago or a few years ago now, and it's just so powerful because decision makers really do need a windshield, not a rearview mirror. As I mentioned before, that pillar of smoke just doesn't do anyone any good. So I already kind of went over the devices. You can use any cell provider though. You can use company-owned hardware or employee-owned hardware. We don't charge for the device license. So a foreman could have it on his laptop, he can have it on his desktop at home, he can have it on his iPhone and his Android tablet with no extra licensing charges. We've also seen, since we went to that licensing model, a trend where employers will allow the employees to put the app on their phone. It takes up very little room. If I look at my iPhone and my iPad, my daughter's Minecraft game and her little princess dress-up games take up far more room than About Time. About Time's about 12 megabytes. Minecraft's about 1.2 gigabytes. So it's not a big resource hog. So we have seen a lot of employees using their own devices, or even we have one customer who has about 807 employees they have out in the field, and they've saw the benefit in putting a device in every single person's hands. And the ROI they've gotten from the system and the real-time data pays for that just over and over and over and over every year. But it was worth it to them because their guys sometimes they're solo, they move around so much, they wanted a device in everyone's hands. And then to have that connectivity, they see the guys are much more responsive after hours. They've got this Android phone, the office is getting in touch with them, they've got About Time on it, they're seeing productivity go up and having that connectivity with employees like they've never had before. So again, just to help give you that visibility and that data as fast as possible, those are, as I mentioned, reports can be scheduled. They're available the same day. They can automatically generate and just show up in your inbox. Budgets, again, accrued immediately, and those alert notifications, which are just indispensable, when budgets are within a predetermined percentage, or the GPS coordinates are off, or OT has been reached, or there's photos or field notes that have come in or whatnot. Just get that information to people as fast as possible. And then giving that reporting with employee time cards, with break it down by location, payroll detail reports, payroll summary reports, task budget reports, and daily logs, the weather information, the discrepancies, everything right there, at your fingertips, in your inbox automatically. So to wrap it all up, you just can't manage risk if you don't document it and measure it. So to give you a tool that's very simple to use and integrates with Sage, that's what About Time is. So with that, Pat, looks like I've really